If you ever wanted to get into game collecting and do it at a relatively affordable price, you're kind of running out of time to buy what are somewhat becoming, I guess, retro games. We talked a couple weeks ago about the PlayStation 3 store closure, which didn't actually end up happening, but kind of the ripple effects that had in driving up the cost of PlayStation 3 games, which have remained somewhat inflated still, even versus what they were prior to the store closure being threatened. The games have remained, relatively expensive still because we have that realization that that day will come regardless, and because of that, in many ways, it feels like we're running out of time to really get into game collecting because these current generation platforms, the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X, and even the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4, aren't something that you want to collect for ever. Just doesn't make sense, and I'll get into why. Not to mention that the price of Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 Wii consoles are higher than they were a year ago, but they're still relatively affordable. So my main point here is that the Xbox 360 is kind of the last frontier, in my opinion, of game collecting going forward. You see, there's really no point of collecting games physically for, say, the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4 for the simple reason that those games require hefty patches. I mean hefty patches that once unavailable will make those game discs be unplayable. The content that's actually on those discs isn't something you want to play, or in some cases are even capable of playing. Now that's a problem that does plague the Nintendo Switch to some degree, but there are plenty of Nintendo Switch games that I think are worth collecting because there is a large portion, if not the complete version, of the game on the cartridge. Now, seems like as we get further and further into the Nintendo Switch's lifespan, those games seem to kind of continue to take a back seat, as many of them continue to have day one patches on there, but definitely not to the degree of the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4, and I expect we'll see that trend continue on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Now, at GameStop, depending on what store you have in your area, some of them are still carrying the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 games. Their selections are very picked over if you do find any at all. And ultimately, that could be a good place to start. But where you probably want to turn to is secondhand places. I'm talking flea markets, swap meets, thrift stores, things like that. I think that's where you get your best deal on 360 games. I will say that the 360 games available on the GameStop website, some of them have good prices, but the reality is many of them are out of stock and they will never come back in stock. Ironically, the PlayStation 3 isn't even really featured on the GameStop website anymore. Like, it doesn't have its own store page section unless you manually type in the URL /PlayStation-3 at the end instead of, say /Xbox 360 on the GameStop webpage. It's not prominent on the storefront, and I feel like we're going to get to a point where the 360 is going to kind of take that direction. And overall, if you're a collector, take your pick. You want the 360 copy or the PlayStation 3 copy? I'd say go for either one when it comes to a given third-party game. But if you really want to play these games, you want to do more than just kind of collect them, sit on them, and try and see if their value will increase going forward, playing the Xbox 360 copies is oftentimes the way to go because many of them are supported via backwards compatibility and are available on that next-gen hardware. And because you can put that physical game disc in and play it on there, I think that's astounding, and it really shows Microsoft's support to those older titles. Now, I recently picked up Knights of the Old Republic, very excited to try it out on the original Xbox, and that's a game that I put the disc of a game that's like nearly 20 years old into my Xbox One. It downloaded basically the game, and it used the disc simply as an unlocker to play that content, and I'm able to actually play a game that's that old on new hardware. It looks better than it did originally, I'm sure. I've seen comparisons online, and it looks like it has a little bit of an upgrade, nothing substantial. I did enjoy playing SSX 3 on the Xbox One because that had even more so of an upgrade. So I think that really makes the Xbox 360 be worth your time in comparison if you really intend to play these games. So it's nearly summer now, garage sale season will soon be underway, and in a lot of ways, it feels like this is your last kind of good shot, your last good hurrah at getting these 360 games. Because what I see, especially with the PlayStation 2 lately, It seems like people are more aware of the PlayStation 2's age and then to some degree the value of the games. Now when I got into game collecting a handful of years ago, I was seeing this with cartridge games and I stayed away from that, where it seemed like any random person would pick up a cartridge game and they'd think, oh, this is relatively old, I should probably get an idea of what it's worth before I sell it. Whereas at the time, PlayStation 2 games, it seemed like they would just turn out, you know, $1 a piece, whatever. They figured they weren't worth anything. Well, the average seller has become aware of that, and they're not selling PlayStation 2 games oftentimes for $1 anymore, unless they are, you know, just literal shovelware garbage, which the PlayStation 2 has plenty of. And I think that we're at that point right now with the Xbox 360, where the games are going to be cheap enough, and they're only going to go up from here as they kind of get older and people become, I guess, more aware of what the games may actually be worth. So whether you're a collector or a reseller, keep that in mind. I think take this opportunity this year to pick up some games for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 if you can still find them cheap enough, because this is kind of, in my opinion, sort of the last frontier of really cheap, affordable game collecting that we'll be seeing for the foreseeable future. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Bailey, and I will see you in the next video.